Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. If you watch this channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Pilot fountain pens. You can get a disposable fountain pen by Pilot that is absolutely reliable for under $5. And at the same time, in my collection, I have a really expensive Urishi fountain pen by Pilot that is gorgeous and writes beautifully, but everywhere in between, their pens are really terrific. Probably no pen is more sort of used as a standard than the Pilot Metropolitan. I have it in the most bland version, the black version, and I and a lot of other fountain pen people are always using it to sort of compare other pens with, and that's partially because it's kind of an average size, and also it writes so well and reliably. You can have it capped for months and then uncap it and it's still writing. And yet, as I say, it's a bit boring. So the other day I was flipping through looking at various pens, and there was a pen that I've seen a lot but never thought to buy, called the Prera. And part of the thing about this pen, which is quite small in the flesh, is that it's actually a pen that officially is only available in Japan. You can get it in the United States at places like Jet Pens and Amazon. On Amazon, it was only around $22 or something like that. It ranges in price. At Jet Pens, they say the warranty on the pen doesn't apply because it's a Japanese Pilot pen rather than an American pen. In any case, what attracted me about this is the color. I saw the color blue and I thought, oh, this is really pretty. And what if it writes and is just as great as other Pilot pens in this range of prices? Why not give it a try? So I'm going to use the pen. Spoiler alert, it's perfectly fine. The problem with it, I would say, is that it's really small. It's smaller than even a Pelican M200. So that's a question about the pen in terms of size, and whether it's just as good as some other pens, or would you be better off with other Pilot pens in this price range. As always, if you find this useful, please do subscribe. So here's the pen, Pilot Prera. It's a really beautiful blue color. I got it in a medium. And as I say, the thing that you notice about it immediately is that it is quite small. It posts very well. Actually, there it is, posting. And it is a cartridge pen, and it uses a converter. So here I have it with a standard Pilot cartridge. Pilot uses proprietary cartridges, so it's not going to work with other pen companies' international style cartridges. You have to get cartridges that Pilot make. Pilot cartridges, though, are really good. They're very reliable in terms of ink flow. So that's a thing. If you want to use a converter, it will use a converter. Here is the converter that I have actually on the Pilot Metropolitan. This is the small Pilot 40 converter. So you have to buy that extra. It doesn't come with the pen, at least not when I got it from Amazon. And, there's a lot of complaints about this converter, not because it doesn't work well, but because it's so small. It doesn't hold a lot of ink. One thing that's a mystery about the pen is the name, Prera. I did a little bit of Google searching on it and can find nothing about the name Prera, except for there is a Puerto Rican reconstruction agency, which I can't imagine that would be what a Japanese pen company would be referring to. So in competitors and pens that look similar, I immediately thought of the Sailor Pro Gear. The Sailor company, of course, is a major Japanese competitor to Pilot. This is a pen that actually has a gold nib on it, but you can see in terms of the shape, it's a little bigger than the Prera. And then Jinhao has come out with a very popular pen that I think is really great for the price, which is the Jinhao 82, which is really a knockoff of the Sailor pen. But you can see how close it is to the Prera pen. I mean, they're just slightly different in terms of the Prera has a silver top to it, or a metal top to it. All these pens are plastic resin, simple bottom. There is some difference in terms of the different decorations. It's not quite the same in the way that the Sailor and the Jinhao are, but they're very close. But the other notable thing is that the Pilot pen is a little smaller, right? The Pilot pen also has just a clip on top, just clicks in, while the Sailor pen and the Jinhao pen are screw tops. So I don't know whether that makes a difference to people. When you're writing a lot in an office place, let's say you're taking notes, that's actually a cool thing to be able just to easily open and close the pen this way. So that may be an advantage, or people don't like that. Even the clips are very similar. The Pilot's clip is more shaped, if you like that, and it is, fairly, it's pretty good. The Jinhao pen, using these pens, they're very, very inexpensive. I mean, you can get them for $4 or $5 on Amazon. They sell them like 3 at a time, and you can change all the parts. You can kind of put a different color top on it if you can get different colors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a very nice pen for the price. The Pilot pen, and this is just the kind of feel about it, it feels more substantial. It feels better made. It looks, I've noticed when I use the Jinhao pen that they have a tendency to kind of unscrew, and even in some cases kind of fall apart because they're so cheap. The Pilot pen, I think, is much better made that way, in that way. So that's an advantage. All these pens post very well. So that isn't different. I think the big competitor to think about, if you like Pilot pens, is going to be the Metropolitan, which is bigger and is made out of metal. So it's actually much more substantial. But like it also posts. It doesn't come in this nice blue color, so that's a difference. Although the Metropolitan has a sort of series of pens that are in different designs to appeal to young people, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't have to just get it in black. This is a heavier, more substantial pen. It's obviously a bigger pen. Both these pens use the same cartridges. Their nibs are almost exactly the same as far as I can tell. I'm going to write with both of them to see if one is better than the other, but at least in my research on the web, there's no difference. Actually, in all of these low-end Pilot pens, or I shouldn't call low-end, but affordable Pilot pens, they all use very similar, if not exactly the same, nibs, which means that if you go very inexpensively to the Kakuno pen. If you go very inexpensively to the Kakuno pen, you're getting the same nib on it. This pen you can get for $10. You're going for the same nib that you have on, essentially you have on the Prera, which might cost in some places as much as $60. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of nib. This is also a bigger pen, and I think actually a more comfortable pen. Seems a little cheaper in terms of maybe how long it's going to last. But so that's something to keep in mind. I mean, this is perhaps a better pen if you're in a conservative office. If you're a lawyer, this might look a little childish. The Metropolitan obviously is both conservative and bigger and more substantial. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a matter of taste, of how they look, not particularly how they write. It also is about how big your hands are, because the Prera really is a bit too small for me, although I was surprised that it was relatively comfortable, even though it is so small. It is even smaller than the Pelican, one of the Pelican 200 or 205 pens. If you have it closed, you'll see that it's even smaller than that. So that's how small. It's actually about the same size as the Pelican 150. So this is the Pelican pastel and green and white M200, and you can see it's a little bigger. It's actually around the same size as the Pelican M150, and it's very sort of even similar looking. The Pelican 150, though, is a piston filler. This is a cartridge, or you could use a converter on it. If you're looking for a Pilot pen that is reliable and is another kind of, I think is trying to compete with the Lamy Safari, you might consider the Pilot Explorer. Now this is bigger pen. I think it's rather attractive. Depends on what you think of the design. It comes in a lot of bright colors. It's going to have the same nib as the Prera does. But the big difference with the Explorer is that it will use a converter. The Con 70 converter will fit in the Explorer, which means that you get a much bigger converter in it than you can with the Prera or even the Metropolitan. So that's something to keep in mind. I think the Explorer is a pretty good pen, and as I say, I think the Explorer is a very good pen, and as I say, it's really meant, I think, to compete with the Lamy Safari, which is, of course, another whole way to go if you want something that is much more modern and sort of with it. I mean, the Prera is kind of nice because it's kind of a conservative design, but it has this nice bright blue color, and it comes in some other nice colors. So that's something. And I guess I keep coming back to the idea that if you have small hands, I think that it's an attractive pen, or maybe you just feel that these kinds of pens are just too showy, but you don't want something so boring that it's like the black Metropolitan. Anyway, so you have a lot of choices out there in terms of pens in this sort of area of, it can go from $10, $5 Chinese to $30, $40, $50, depending on where you buy your pens. Capped, this pen is 15.6 grams, which by comparison, if you compare it to, let's say, the Metropolitan, is almost it's 26.6 grams. So it's 10 grams less weight than the Metropolitan. Another comparison might be the Pro Gear Sailor Pro Gear, which is similar. It's sort of a little heavier. It's almost 17 grams. So it's a fairly light pen, but as I say, it doesn't feel cheap. It seems well made. Here's another comparison. Here is one of the Jinhao pens, and actually it's heavier. I'm surprised. It's almost 20 grams, 19.3 grams. Size-wise, it's 4 3/4 inches long. When it is posted, it's 5 1/4. And just to give a comparison, The Metropolitan posted is almost, well, really 6 inches long. So that is considerable, 3/4 of an inch difference in terms of the size of the pen. I mean, really, when you're getting that small, you're really talking about the sort of, really, when you're getting that small, you're talking about the territory of a pocket pen, like the Kaweco pen, maybe, which is a little bit bigger than 5 inches. So this is a little bigger than that. So just to give you a sense, it's almost like a pocket pen in terms of its size. So how does it write? So it's Pilot Prera. And this is a Pilot black cartridge. Now that was one thing that surprised me. And I wondered if that was something about it because it's a Japanese pen, is that it came with a black cartridge. Often with pens, and I think with Pilot pens, when they come with a cartridge, it's a dark blue cartridge. But anyway, and I prefer the black cartridge. I forgot to mention that this is a medium nib. Now this is very much a Japanese medium, which really is like a Western fine. And as you would expect with one of these less expensive Pilot pens, there is no line variation. It's not crazy wet. In fact, I would say it's even a bit dry. And, you know, it's not super smooth. It's just sort of okay. So, as a point of comparison, here is the Pilot Metropolitan. Now, this is also medium. And I have actually Waterman Intense Black in it. I'm using a converter here. And it is considerably wetter and smoother. Now, I've had this pen for a long time, so it may be, maybe that's not a fair comparison. But for whatever reason, the Pilot Prera that I've gotten just isn't as smooth and writing as well as some other Pilot pens that I have in this price range. I was so disappointed with my original writing test of the Prera when I used it with the cartridge and compared it to the Metropolitan that I decided to redo it and put the converter, the same converter that I had in the Metropolitan, into the Prera and see if that makes a difference. So here is the Pilot Prera. It's a medium. And this is Waterman Intense Black. And this is Rhodia paper, which I forgot to mention. Now again, there is not any line variation. And it is pretty dry. It's still pretty dry. This is definitely a Japanese medium. It seems to me to be more like a fine. And I like my pens to be wetter than this. It's too dry. A quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Now, it's not any much better. And you know, I'm making a decision here, which I think that this particular pen, this version of the Prera pen that I got on Amazon, is just not, the nib is just not up to what I would expect a Pilot nib to be. And I really don't think it's worth drawing with. You know, I'd rather draw with the Metropolitan than with this. Or almost, you know, this doesn't seem any better to me than a Jinhao nib. So I have to say that at least this Prera pen that I have, the nib is just not great. And the amount of ink that is coming in from the pen makes the black ink actually look gray because it's rather dry. So I'm not going to go on to make a drawing with this. So this is one of the few times that I have not liked Pilot pen. That's my conclusion. This I would not. I like the way it looks. Doesn't feel bad, but I don't really recommend this pen over the competitors, Jinhao 82, or over. I would get a Pilot Metropolitan over this pen for sure, and definitely a Lamy Safari. Okay, in conclusion, I decided not to do a drawing with the Prera with this nib because I really did not like the nib that came with it. I think, you know, out of the box, you're better off with the Metropolitan, at least in terms of my experience, that this wrote much better, or the Pilot Explorer, which is a great choice because of the converter. You can get the larger converter with it. Now, if you really like the colors of the Prera, and you have some other Pilot pens around, but you're not wild for whatever reason because of the nib, if that, you know, it could be just a one-off thing that the pen that I got, the nib isn't that great. And maybe other people have had better experiences. It gets fairly good reviews from other people. But anyway, I could easily swap the nib from any of my other Pilot pens. I can even put italic or stub nib that comes on some of their calligraphic pens onto this pen. So if I really, you know, it depends on how much I really like. I really do like this blue color, so that might be a way to make this pen better. There's one thing, though, that is annoying about the less expensive Pilot pens, which is that they only tend to come in kind of extra fine mediums. They don't come in broads. And, you know, that's one of the things that I would wish that Pilot would do with these less expensive pens. But, of course, that's also true of the Chinese manufacturers. They also don't do broad pens either. I'm not quite sure. That must have something to do with the way in which pens are used in Asian countries, and they prefer them to be finer, or else they put things like Fude nibs on their less expensive pens if they want something that's thicker. But you have to go to pens that are in the $100 range more to get Pilot, to get a Pilot broad, and their broad nibs are actually really terrific. So that's something to think about. That's not true of other manufacturers, German manufacturers who make some choices. For example, Safari pens come in broads. I believe TWSBI pens do. So, there are other pen. If you like broad nibs, then you don't want to go with a inexpensive Pilot pen. You have to go with something else for that. Okay, so I hope if this is useful, don't forget to subscribe.